We'll begin in just a few minutes, and this webinar will be recorded, so we'll send the link to the video to you, so just feel free to relax and enjoy the presentation. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, you can type them into the questions box in the GoToWebinar panel, and Q&A will be at the end of the session. So if we do not respond to your question, we will get in touch with you by email. Now I'll hand it over to Derrick Fernandez, who will get us started.
Thank you, Melissa. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Today we're going to talk about integrating your BIM process. As an AEC community, we use many tools to complete the tasks required for our projects. A major issue is that these tools often do not communicate or lend for data transfer from one stage to another. Affinity acts as an integration hub to pass information to, get information from, or even as a bridge between popular BIM tools we use daily. We will only cover a couple of these BIM tools during the seminar due to our time constraints. Hopefully you will get a good idea on the power of Affinity and what it has to offer while integrating your BIM process. Let's start by discussing our current process and a major issue we face as a community. We use many tools to do our conceptual design. Some people use hand drawings, Rhino, CAD, or even SketchUp. We then switch to our BIM tool when we're ready to develop our model and ultimately create our construction documents. How do we complete this transition? Well, for most of us, that schematic design model becomes useless. It is usually considered a throwaway model at this point. Our production team then has to duplicate the previous efforts and start from scratch using a different software. You can achieve bi-directional flow with these tools, or you can use Affinity as that bridge to pass models and data between them. Instead of throwing away your models, you now have a congruent path from one to another. Plus, Affinity has multiple features within itself to eliminate using unconnected or dumb tools and having data drops along your project timeline, allowing for a fully integrated process. So let's get started. We're going to get started with SketchUp. That's going to be the first integration we're going to talk about today. I'm going to show you actually two ways that Affinity integrates with SketchUp. The first is actually manipulating your building envelope through SketchUp and bringing that back into Affinity for update of your schematic design. This is an example of a Affinity design. You can see that it's a mass of a building. And what I'm going to do is actually edit this envelope through SketchUp. I hope everyone could see the screen. By selecting the Edit envelope in SketchUp, the model is automatically transferred over into SketchUp. I can then come into SketchUp and manipulate the design as I want to. So if I started to change the envelope shape at all I would do is pull the faces that I wanted to manipulate and then ultimately sync that back into Affinity. Going back into my Affinity model, if I select a story, you can quickly start to see the outline of the envelope. And now I can manipulate my design to actually meet or to match up with what I've done in SketchUp. So if I wanted to manipulate the envelope, change the shape of the building, do my renderings in SketchUp, I could actually bring that information back into Affinity so that now I could come in and make sure that my design in Affinity meets that envelope. So I can actually come in and start to add in rooms, that marry with the exterior envelope of the building. And ultimately, I can pass this into my production tool. The second integration with SketchUp that I'm going to show is where we actually scan an existing SketchUp model and bring that model into Affinity as a design. I'm actually going to show that through a video because it takes a little time to actually process that. Here's an example of a SketchUp model. I created a scene that gets rid of the exterior envelope, and you can see that it actually has interior planes. What Affinity does is goes through the model and decides what's considered an enclosed room. It'll actually go in and assign rooms to these spaces, and those rooms are ultimately what we're going to bring into Affinity as our design. So now that the scan is complete, Affinity has assigned rooms to these enclosed regions. And when I do a sync back to Affinity, what it's going to do is actually go in and create rooms within the Affinity application. Now that we have this design, what I'm going to do is actually open that up so we can see what that looks like. Now you see that those rooms actually came in with the shape that our SketchUp model has them as. If we wanted to, we could come in and change the names from being just a room number to actual name. Affinity also gives you the ability to import a program. So if you have an existing program that you want to bring in, you can actually import that program. And I'm going to import a program right now so that we can marry the program to our actual design. So this is actually taking an Excel file that's formatted. We're importing it in, and now we actually have a program within this project file. What I would do now is actually go into my program navigation tree, select the space that I want to assign with that design item, and by right-clicking and saying assign to the program, it now ties this existing space from the design to my program item. So I'll do a couple just so that we can see the differences. This plays a major role, especially when you're doing design to program validation. Now that I've brought a design in from SketchUp, I've brought a program in from Excel, I can actually go to my program view and show program versus actual. And this is actually showing me all of the rooms that are in my design versus what's in my program. So now that I've assigned room 41 to my conference room program item, I can start to see what my program asks for and what my design actually has. So I can start to see differences between what was programmed versus what was actually designed. So it gives you a quick way of doing design validation using your different BIM tools. All right. The next thing I'm going to talk about is our IES integration. And if you guys have any questions, please type them into the chat box. And at the end of the presentation, we'll go through the questions. And if we have to, we'll come back into the software to answer those questions. All right, thanks. So now we're going to talk about the IES integration. Close SketchUp. The Affinity and IES integration shows how different design options within Affinity can be compared and used to perform some of the preliminary energy analysis. What Affinity has is a VE questionnaire. So within Tools, if I run my VE questionnaire, what I'm going to do is actually go in and assign some of the property information that I need to run these embedded reports based on my location and the design of my building. So you can quickly see the embedded questionnaire asks you the type of building, so whatever type of building you're going to use, your location, glazing percentage, and then your construction type, HVAC type, and so on and so forth. The purpose is so that you can actually use the IES data on this specific location, from climate changes to the orientation of the building, the usage, the occupancy, MEP systems. All that type of information is analyzed so that the reports give you the proper information. So once you submit that data, you can actually come in, and within Affinity's navigation pane, under our reports, you'll have a performance sub-tab, and that's where your energy analysis reports are located. So I'm going to run this climate review report real quick, and it'll show you some of the information based on this building and that data that we just input into the questionnaire. All right, so here's an example of a report. It kind of gives you the information based on the location. The latitude and longitude that I put in is in China. But it starts to tell you, the heat days versus the cold days, the degree days, and that information so that you could do an early energy analysis based on your building and determine how you want to actually design your building. You also have the ability to run different design options within Affinity. So I have one building here. I've created my design based on the rooms. I put in that information. And when I run the building review, it starts to give me, the BTUs needed to heat the building and stuff like that. So I can actually start to run this report based off of my specific design option within Affinity. So it can start to tell you, your heat losses for that particular building and so on and so forth. If I come and I change my design option, so I change my scenario, now it's the same program laid out a different way. You'll notice that the square footage of this scenario is a little larger. So the second report, has a bigger square footage that it's running the report on. And our actual heat gains and heat losses may be greater because we have more of an exterior wall than what we had in our initial design. Affinity also gives you the ability to push your design into the IES platform. So I'm going to do that real quick. The purpose of this is because within Affinity, when you're running these reports and you're getting this feedback, it's all at the generic or the preliminary stages of your design. If you want to get a more detailed analysis, what you want to do is actually go into the IES application and get more detailed with the information. So if I come in here and I change this to a render view, you'll quickly start to see that it's starting to show my 25% of glazing. Within IES, I can actually go and start to specify the wall types in more detail. I can start to specify the type of glazing, the reflectiveness of the glazing, and that type of information. I could change the window sizes and manipulate how the windows actually look within the model it portion of IES. So I could get a more detailed analysis within IES than I can actually get within Affinity. So this is where you can actually pass your model into the IES platform so that you get that more detailed analysis. All right. Give me 1 second. I need to change my location. All right. Okay. So if you have any other questions about IES, please type them into the chat box, and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation again. All right. The next thing we're going to talk about is COBie. I know a lot of architects might not know about COBie. Affinity actually gives you the ability to import and export data into the COBie spreadsheet format. The information can be used in different ways. The way to actually do that export from Affinity out to COBie is just to go to your file, export, select the COBie extension, and you actually have the option of exporting either program information or the design information. You could do either one so that you have that information within that COBie spreadsheet based on that. So you just select that, you name your file, and when it's done processing, you actually get the spreadsheet of the COBie information. So this is not it. All right. So this is an example of a COBie spreadsheet, the workbook. So you can see that it's giving me all of my different components. I have all of my different zones or departments, all of the spaces within that project file. So it actually created this for me rather than manually creating this on my own. The reason why people actually use COBie is because some government agencies have required that you do an output of COBie for their use. There's also used to input information into a facilities management tool. So you can actually export out to the COBie format and import this into your facilities management tool. It actually has all the information that you would need to put into that application. Right? So you have your rooms, your objects, your departments, and even supplemental information at the very end that you would need in that FM tool. Let's see. The last BIM tool we're going to really talk about as far as integration goes today is Revit. Not only do we integrate with Revit, we also integrate with ArchiCAD and EcoSim. They're the other major BIM production tools out there. So the integration is very similar to what I'm going to show you guys in Revit. So it should give you an idea how we work with those other tools also. All right, so within Revit, the only thing I've really done, this is a brand new project file, the only thing I've actually done is connect this to an Affinity project file. So it's a bi-directional link so that information can be passed back and forth between the two tools. The first thing that I'm going to show you is actually pushing a program from Affinity into Revit. Some people prefer to just do a room dump into Revit and design within Revit rather than using the design tools within Affinity. What this is going to do is actually give me the ability to push property information that I've already put into my Affinity file into parameters in the Revit application so that they can be scheduled. What it does is it goes in and creates unplaced rooms. So instead of creating a model, it's actually creating a list of rooms for your use within the Revit model. So if I actually go to a room schedule, you'll notice that it's grouped by department. So my administration and admin services is my department. And then I have an instance of each room that needs to go into my design. So it's starting to give me what the program area is for those rooms. And it's actually showing you information that are mapped across two parameters through the integration, or through the sync with Affinity. What I would do is actually, as I started to create my Revit model, I would start to draw in my walls and create my enclosed spaces. And instead of dropping in a new room, which is the default for Revit, I'm actually going to pick from my room list rooms that were created through Affinity. So I can actually come in here and start to drop in rooms that Affinity created. These rooms now will have a tie back to the Affinity program so that I can ultimately do my comparison of design to program, like we talked about earlier. I can actually go into my schedule and start to see the rooms that are placed. This copy facts, you know, it's supposed to be 54 square feet. It's actually 611. So I can start to see within Revit some side-by-side comparisons of what's designed and what was programmed for each of these rooms. Right. The second integration I'm going to show with Revit is where you actually bring a design in. So instead of having just my program pushed in as unplaced rooms, I'm actually going to come in and sync over the design from Affinity. So this is assuming that we've done a design model within Affinity, and I'm going to pull that into Revit. This process takes, maybe 30 seconds. And the reason is because it's actually going in and creating all of the stories that aren't created. It's drawing in walls. So it's drawing in all the walls to enclosed spaces. It's dropping the rooms in. It's merging walls where walls are aligned. It's even going in and finding some families that I had placed and dropping those families in their correct location within the new Revit file. So bear with me 1 second while this sync goes through. All right, there we go. So it went through, it created everything, and dropped them into place. So now if I actually look at a 3D, instead of my Revit team starting from scratch, they actually have a project file to work from. I can go back to story 1 and actually annotate this. So you can see it actually placed the rooms within those enclosed regions. Within Revit, as I manipulate my design, I start to change my wall types, I massage the plans, I move rooms around. What we're going to do is actually push this back into Affinity so that we can ultimately keep up with our comparison back to the original program. So if I came in here, and I'm just going to change one room. So now my design is starting to change. What I would do is actually come into my sync and push the design back to Affinity to update my design in Affinity. And that update is what's going to give me real-time comparison back to my original program. So if I come from within Revit and I open up, a window into that Affinity file, I can actually view my program versus actual. And this is where it's showing me my program. I was programming for 5 at 540. My design actually had 4. And you can start to see as the sizes of the rooms change, that'll show up in my program versus actual view. I could also quickly come in here and highlight the items that are different between program and design. So it gives you that validation quickly rather than going through item by item and checking with a spreadsheet in your document set. Because these rooms are now tied to our Affinity file, I can actually select a room and bring up the details of that room. So instead of going back into Affinity or going into a room data book, you can actually view all the details of this room directly from Revit. So I can come in here and I can start to see the information that wasn't mapped across the parameters directly from Revit. So I can start to see the different finishes, MEP data that's related to this room. I can also come in here and start to see adjacency requirements or even components that are supposed to be in the room. If those components aren't placed in the room, it'll start to highlight red the items that are missing. So I could then go and populate those items after the fact. The last integration I'm going to talk about with Revit is the toolbar. Affinity has created this new toolbar within Revit. The purpose of the toolbar is so that you can manipulate your Revit model, after either sync has already been done. So if the program actually changes while you're already in design development or in CDs, you can actually still view the program within Revit and drag directly from our navigation into your Revit file. So I can quickly start to see items that are deficient, and that's where you see the negative numbers in our program navigation tree. And I can actually drag those items into Revit, and they come in as groups. So now I have all the information related to that room. I have the objects, the components. I can ungroup it now and start to draw in my walls or place this where I need to within my model. And that will ultimately go in and tell you if your meeting what your program is requiring and what you're not. You also have the ability to come and look at your program and select spaces and see those spaces within your Revit model. It'll quickly highlight those items so that you can find them within your Revit model rather than trying to, manually look through an entire model and find individual rooms. You can find that program item within your navigation pane, select it, and it'll highlight within your Revit model for you. Affinity also has where we can run custom reports within the Affinity application. Having this new toolbar within Revit gives you the ability to run those reports directly in Revit also. One of the new reports that's a big time saving to a lot of people is our Revit room datasheet. What you do is actually select a room within your Revit model and run our Revit room datasheet. This is just an example of a Revit room datasheet. You can customize your reports to look like office standards. This is just an example of one. Let me pull it up. And you'll see that it actually pulls in all the information related to that room, if it's cost information, finishes, and it also cuts out a graphic of your Revit model. So it actually snips your Revit model and puts that graphic directly into the report for you. So you could just, imagine the time savings of actually going in, creating those custom, those views of those rooms, clipping an image, putting it into a title block, putting that data in, and creating a room data book. You can quickly do it directly through Affinity in seconds rather than, hours or days or weeks that it would take you to create a room data book. All right. Let's see. That pretty much concludes the main portion of the webinar. Thanks for joining us today. If anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to stay on, for another 15 minutes or so, answering them. If you want to contact us, please feel free to contact us at sales@Trelligence, and we'll be happy to set up one-on-one demos online if you would prefer. Melissa, you have any questions?
Yep. Like Derrick said, please enter any questions you have in the questions box. To start us off, I have one that says, at what point in the process would you start using the IES integration?
That's a good question. The good thing about having the IES embedded directly with Affinity is that there is no one starting point when you should use integration. You can use it at any stage that you want to. The first time you lay out those rooms, you can start to run those reports to see what those heat gains and heat losses would be with that design versus another. You don't even have to go to the point where you lay out individual rooms. You could run our stacking script that just stacks a building based off a footprint size and the amount of information that you have in your program, and run your reports based off just that stacking script. So you could just get a mass of a building and run those energy analysis at the early stages.
Okay, great. Also, is there a limit to the size of project that Affinity can handle or synchronize?
No, there isn't. The Affinity files are a tenth the size of a Revit model. Because we're data-based, we can hold a lot more information. So there really isn't a limit to the amount of information you could put into one Affinity file.
Okay. And what model elements are supported for import into Revit? Walls, framing, columns, etc.
We've actually are able to push and pull any Revit families into Affinity. So you actually have the ability to bring your families into Affinity, and as you're doing your design, you can place those objects within the Affinity model. When you push back to Revit, it automatically generates the walls, or you have the option of not doing walls and doing room separation lines. The framing can come across as far as the columns go, because those are considered families. So if you brought those families into Affinity and did some, minor framing in Affinity, that would actually get pushed into Revit also.
Okay. And if you test different scenarios in Affinity, can you choose which ones to synchronize with Revit?
Yes. We actually give you the ability to push one or multiple designs scenarios from Affinity into Revit as different phases or as design options.
Okay, great. And can you also assign equipment to a program like you showed with assigning rooms in the SketchUp example?
Yes. Affinity, we didn't really talk about Affinity. It's more about the integration, but Affinity gives you the ability to not only add property information to these rooms, but you can add any requirements as far as adjacencies or any type of requirement you can think of. You also can create your equipment or furniture list related to those individual rooms. So it does give you the ability to add that equipment data to your program.
Okay, and I have another one. You showed the room data sheets. What other types of reports are available in Affinity?
Out of the box, we give you some of our standard reports. So, equipment list. So I can actually I can run some of these reports so you can see examples of what we give you. Equipment list, where I could pull the equipment information from cost to manufacturer. We have, our floor-to-floor report. It just gives you your design and all the items on your different stories. Design to program analysis. So if you're trying to create a report to see, what the programmed, what your design spaces are, and the differences between the two, that's here. There's also different room data sheets. If you want to do a room data sheet on your program, or if you want to do one on the design, there's those two different options within the out-of-the-box reports. And then space programs. We have multiple space program reports, and the reason why we have multiple ones, it's the same information. It's just showing you that you can customize the reports different ways. So depending on how you want your reports to look, you have that freedom to customize it. You can create custom reports that can pull whatever whatever information you want from the Affinity or Revit model. There's no limit to what the reports can show. It's kind of up to you on what kind of reports you need to create for output or for passing on information.
Okay, great. I think those are all the questions for right now.
Oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't showing my screen.
Okay, did you want to click back through?
Yeah. So this is an example of the different space program reports. And it's the same information, it's just displayed a different way. This is your program difference reports. So I can start to show you the differences. Floor to floor kind of pulls an image of each floor so that you can see what those items look like. And then your equipment list. So it starts to show you the different information based on your equipment within each of the rooms.
All right. Thank you very much, Derrick. If you have any other questions, feel free to email us at sales@trelligence.com, and we'd be happy to answer them for you. If you wanted to arrange a full one-on-one demo, we'd be happy to do that as well. This concludes our webinar today, and we appreciate you joining us. Thank you, and have a nice rest of your day.